globally. I'd like to welcome my next guests to this program, Mr. Yahya Jahangiri, international lecturer. Thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Well, first of all, we've been talking about the revolution, Islamic Revolution of 1979, and I would like to look at what made this revolution different compared to previous revolutions in your perspective.
You know that when we look up, we Google the word revolution, what concept comes to our mind is more different than what Imam Khomeini meant by the revolution. If we make a comparison between the revolution in the view of Imam Khomeini with the revolutions took place in Russia, African countries, France, we see that there is very big difference even in conceptual aspect, moreover in practical aspect. You see that in the, that's why recently I had a lecture in one of the conferences. I said that it is not fair to translate the revolution, Inqilab of Imam Khomeini to the revolution. Because mostly when they hear about the revolution, the pre-assumptions they have in their mind and the concept of the revolution they have in their mind, they compare it to the revolution and Inqilab of Imam Khomeini, then they say that it is so. But there is very big difference between the revolution of Imam Khomeini and the other revolutions. You know that one of the main aspect of the revolutions in the world is that it is the change of the power, change of the political figures. We saw it in the Zimbabwean revolution, France revolution, and Russian revolution. Wherever we saw the revolution, the peoples shifted the power to another one. The power was changed from a group to another one. But we see that when Imam Khomeini gained the revolution, Imam Khomeini didn't move to the power. He moved to the holy city of Qom and said that I'm the Talaba and clergyman. I'm a researcher and I'm a religious scholar. Power should be in the hand of those who are a proper scholar. You see, Imam Khomeini, by the revolution, never thought that I have to be in the power. But in the other revolutions, they do so. That's why the core of the other revolutions is that it is a political revolution. It is a political activity. But Imam Khomeini's revolution not only is a political revolution, but also is a cultural revolution. Let me add a mystical revolution, social revolution, and also a religious revolution. That's why this is the big difference between the Imam Khomeini's revolutions and other revolutions. Here we can add, that's why Imam Khomeini's revolution, today we are not here just to sanctify and to praise the revolution took place almost 40 years ago in Iran. We are here to say that the revolution took place by Imam Khomeini and not only Iranian nation, but also many Muslims. Before the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran, many in India, Pakistan, and other Islamic countries, they did activity for the Islamic Revolution.
So then that's something unique in itself, because if you're talking about the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution, then it was dealing with basically the French people and the Russian people only cared.
Very true.
So what is it about the Islamic Revolution in Iran that made people from all over the world feel that it's also their revolution?
So that's why we have to make a difference between the Islamic Revolution in Iran. Actually, it was not Iranian revolution, it was Islamic revolution in Iran. And if we look to the Islamic revolution in Iran, in a fair way, we have to say that it was a mystical revolution, a spiritual revolution. According to some statistics, even the Christians, they praise Iranian Islamic revolution in Iran because it took place when we understand the greatness of the job of Imam Khomeini. If we study the Islamic revolution at its time, we saw that the revolution took place when the area was, the atmosphere of the world was a positivist approach to the humanity lifestyle, in a way that the scientists, philosophers, the scholars were saying that whatever is accepted by the science, and science means positivist approach and methodology. Based on positivist approach, something is accepted, it is true, otherwise it is false. Based on this view, they were saying that religious teachings, spiritual teachings, they are no false and no true. They are meaningless. In this way, you see that religious teachings, even they couldn't evaluate it as a false statement. They say that religious teachings is such an illusion and superstitious. They never make a sense to the life.
Which added to the secularization at the time.
Very true. And Imam Khomeini raised a revolution based on religion, based on the name of divine teaching, based on the name of God. So his revolution actually revolt and changed the worldview and approach to the religion. So it is not fair to localize it to within the border to say that it was Iranian revolution, as you asked, because of the roots of this revolution. This revolution actually changed the approach of human being to the world. Imam Khomeini said that you philosophers, Western scientists, you restricted the mind and view of the human being, the sight of human being, only to the positivist method. You have to open the window in a way that human being can gain the knowledge, can gain the understanding, its solution from other window as well. And it is the window of the spirituality, it is the window of the divine understanding, and through that you can make many changes in human life, as well as I did the revolution in Iran. That's why Imam Khomeini, from very beginning of his revolution till end of his life, he was insisting that this revolution won't be restricted in one area. This revolution is not like the other revolutions. This revolutions can move abroad.
And let me just jump in here, because actually I was talking to a previous guest, and what you've just said, actually this revolution moving beyond. Something very interesting was what Imam Khomeini did in the very beginning of the revolution. He talked about the oppressed, the mustazafin, all over the world, and he initiated something was quite remarkable if we look in the context of the pressure that revolutionary Iran had at that point in time. He stood up for Palestine immediately. He condemned Israel immediately for their crimes. And he made that a very big part of the revolutionary goals of the Islamic Republic. How significant do you see that move in actually helping to internationalize this movement?
So, very important question. Let me add some points to come to the question, to the answer. First, Imam Khomeini raised the issue of the Palestine to say that I'm a Shia scholar, but this revolution is not never be restricted to a certain religious sect, to say that it is a Shiite revolution. Imam Khomeini, he was a very great Shia scholar, But one of his demand was the case of Palestine. He never raised a certain sectarian demands. Also, he never raised a national demand in a way that just it is the, if we look to the Imam Khomeini's mottos and what he raised on that time, it was an international humanitarian demand, not Iranian demand or sectarian demand. One of the problem, and it is made by the medias, they want to restrict Imam Khomeini's revolution to the Iranian nation or a sectarian nation. But if we look at it, that is widely different. One of the very key concepts in the revolution of Imam Khomeini, as you mentioned, it is the concept, the keywords of mustaz'afin, oppressed people. In the view of Imam Khomeini, all human being has a right to be aware of everything, and they have to flourish their capacity and ability to reach as they can. But Imam Khomeini believes that those who are poor, they never be poor initially. They became poor by oppression. So Imam Khomeini says that this, the concept of being oppressed, istiz'af, is done by the other man, by the other nation, by the other government. That's why here he derives another concept, which is the oppressors. That's why Imam Khomeini says that we have to stand against the oppressors. Here, it is not only in the realm of political aspect to say that Palestinians are oppressed. In the view of Imam Khomeini, we have oppressed in economic field. And today you see that even Iranian, we are, from political aspect, we are free. But based on the economic aspect, we are oppressed. In Imam Khomeini's view, everyone, whether to be Iranian or non-Iranian, whether to be Shia or non-Shia, Muslim or non-Muslim, you have to stand with oppressed people against the oppressors.
And he set that example, again, very early, not just with the Palestinian situation. If we go back to after the situation that he had with the former American embassy here in Iran,
Yeah.
that what he did initially, he made sure that the Black Americans were freed and also the women were freed, because he said they are two groups that have been so oppressed over the years. I want to talk about that that perspective of Imam Khomeini. I mean, we're talking about 42 years ago, an individual at that time who was 79 years old at the time of the revolution, being so internationally astute and aware and in touch with the plight of the oppressed in the world.
Yeah. Look, according to Imam Khomeini's view, human beings were oppressed in not only in Iran, but many areas in the world. So Imam Khomeini, one of the big samples of this oppression took place and illustrated actually and manifested in Palestine. That's why even before the revolution, you see, Imam Khomeini, still a revolution didn't take place in Iran. But Imam Khomeini is talking about the Palestine. It shows that Imam Khomeini never wanted to only what will motivate Iranians nation for the desire of their demands.
Not a nationalist movement.
Imam Khomeini want to open Iranian minds for the demand of international issue. That's why Imam Khomeini opened the gate for Iranian. Imam Khomeini opened a great window for Iranian nation to look to demand of all human beings, not only for Iranian cases. That's why, again, I would like to insist that Imam Khomeini's revolution was not a sectarian revolution and also a national revolution. Let me add one point. Sorry,
no, it's okay.
Maybe this didn't be raised in this in these TV programs. Imam Khomeini's revolution was also a mystical revolution. I, as a scholar in this field, let me elaborate this field a bit. For example, it was a mystical revolution as well. Before Imam Khomeini, we have a mystical studies and mystical activities. In their method of mystical activities means you have to go to your own temple. You have to isolate yourself from what is going on in society, and you mediate with yourself in a way that to gain peace, knowledge, and something like that. But Imam Khomeini said that it is not accepted. We have to make a revolution. Let me refer to what I mentioned in the beginning of our talk. Imam Khomeini says that my revolution is not only a political revolution, but also a mystical revolution as well.
What an inner revolution.
Yeah. Imam Khomeini actually revolted the mystical approach. What happened? Imam Khomeini says that even the midnight, if you are ordered to pray for the Allah, and in the prayer of the night, midnight, you are remembering 40%, it is not only to pray for them. It shows that, it indicates that even in midnight you have the care of the 40 Muslims, they are oppressed. In the midnight, meditation and mysticism in the view of Imam Khomeini never means that you have to isolate yourself from the society. You neglect what is going on in Palestine. You neglect what is going on in Syria. In Imam Khomeini's view, mysticism, you have to care about what is going on for the oppressed people. Also, he made a revolution in jurisprudence. Before Imam Khomeini, the method of ijtihad was, if we compare it, what happened by Imam Khomeini, it is widely different. That's why Imam Khomeini, I wrote a book about in this issue, the view of Imam Khomeini, and actually the revolution made by Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini says that our jurisprudence should be dynamic in a way that the jurisprudence can respond to the need of all human beings, not only to the need of a sectarian nation or sectarian religious group. So Imam Khomeini's view, Imam Khomeini's revolution is a multi-purpose revolution. If it is going to be done in each area, we can have a golden society in the world. That's why whoever, any person, wherever he was, even in India or Pakistan or in African countries, when they witnessed the revolution of Imam Khomeini, when they heard the voice of Imam Khomeini, they hear their inner side, the voice of their inner side, and they responded to the revolution of Imam Khomeini.
So basically what you're saying is that Imam Khomeini was looking at individuals and societies evolving, changing, not becoming stagnant, and also being very much in touch with the situation at the time.
Very true.
Now, let's fast forward 42 years later. Would you say that has materialized in the sense of the Islamic Republic right now?
As I said, that Imam Khomeini made a revolution in many aspects. Also, Imam Khomeini said that religion is not only talking about the hereafter, but also religion could have to solve the very need of the human being in their daily life. That's why if we look to the what happened after the revolution in Iran, regardless we were under the 80 years of the imposed war by the many countries. Actually, it is not fair to say that by the Iraqi government, Saddam Hussein. Also, we were under the sanction, but we see that we got very results and achievements in this field. Maybe from the scientific achievement, you had some reports. Let me talk from the field sure. It is the field of my study. From humanitarian studies, from art sciences, let me say, in the field of Islamic studies and humanitic studies, we had very great changes. Actually, I can call it, it is not only what we can call it, it is not only a result, an achievement, but actually it is a kind of revolution. Before Islamic revolution in Iran, the ladies who were the women who were studying in the universities, it is not compared what is now today in the universities, but also as I am a professor in the seminaries. Before revolution in Iran, the seminaries in Iran for the ladies who were interested to study in the religious issue, it was not to be counted. But today in Iran we have almost 100,000 ladies who are studying only in the religious field, and they graduated or they doing research in this field. Look, just compare it. And let me add one more point here, and it is very important. Those who want to entitle Iranian Islamic revolution as a sectarian revolution. Before revolution in Iran, you know, we have the Sunni brothers in Iran and also minorities in Iran. Right. Their temples, their activities, also particularly the Sunnis, they were living in Iran. Their masjid, their school to study their religious studies there. Before Islamic revolution in Iran and after the revolution, which Imam Khomeini was a Shiite scholar, it is not comparable. So Islamic revolution brought freedom to the minorities and the other sects. Maybe they are not Shia. So our achievement, it is not fair just compare it in what we achieved in the field of scientific studies or other issues, which they are very great. I want to talk about those maybe are neglected in the medias and our reports. What we achieved in the field of freedom. I was the deputy of the University of Islamic Denomination. Most of our scholars and the students were Sunni. My students, my colleagues, they were saying that before revolution we had no freedom, but after the revolution we can publish our books. Freedom is one of the great achievements we received by the Imam Khomeini. So Imam Khomeini's revolution can bring freedom. But what we see today in some medias, they want to deviate this truth, and that is the very truth we have to know about this.
Well, speaking of deviating, there are those that want to deviate the truth. I want to touch on the aspect of sectarianism that you had talked about, because of course, Imam Khomeini from the very beginning, as we've talked about, the Palestinian issue and so many other issues, basically he said from the beginning, we're all brothers and sisters when he were talking about Shia, Sunni, and also you touched upon the respect for Christians and other minorities in this society. I want to fast forward to recent times and how hegemonic powers have tried to use the same issues that Imam 42 years ago and prior to that talked about the importance of being united. However, we saw, whether we're talking about in the situation with Daesh and how that terrorist entity tried to use with the excuse of sectarianism. And we also saw mainstream media picking up on that same theme and continually talk about the divisions. So where does that leave us at this point in time? So we know that the mainstream media continually tries to push that sectarian narrative. What is the reality of the Islamic Republic today and the direction that it's going when we're talking about that particular issue?
Let me just, before going to the answer, raise this point.
Yeah.
You know that in imposed war against Iran by the Saddam regime, Imam Khomeini was a Shia leader, but many Sunnis, they sent their children voluntarily to support the revolution, and they were martyred in this imposed war. Not only the Sunnis, we have martyrs from minorities in Iran, from Jews, Zoroastrians, and Christians in Iran. So Imam Khomeini, as a religious man, he opened the view for all human beings here. That's why I want to call Imam Khomeini's revolution not only Islamic revolution, not only Shiite revolution, but also a humanitarian revolution. Those who are justice seekers, those who are peace seekers, they have to go back to the Imam Khomeini's teachings. So one of the issues Imam Khomeini talked about, it was the unity, to establish the unity. That's why in his jurisprudence, in his mystical books, in his political speeches, he was insisting on being united. Kalimat al-Tawheed, the word of unity, it was one of the key concepts in Imam Khomeini's view. And after the revolution, the supreme leader Imam Khomeini, he continued his path. But what is going on in the media regarding your question? One of the problems was that instead of spread, Imam Khomeini tried to spread the pure Islam. But and the pure Islam was touched by the heart of anyone throughout the globe. But the media tried to establish a disordered, deviated sect of Islam, to put it instead of the pure Islam. That's why we saw the radical Muslims, whether to be in Afghanistan or ISIS, as you mentioned, they supported them, and they wanted to show that Islam is manifested in the form of ISIS. And the media, mostly you are expert in this field, media were trying to say that ISIS is Islamic. Actually, they were not Islamic group, because they not only they killed the Yazidis in Iraq, the Christians in Iraq, but also they killed Shiite in Iraq, and Sunnis more than Shiite in Iraq. So it shows that this group were not the most Islamic group, but by the name of so-called Islamic, they tried to isolate pure Islam established by Imam Khomeini.
And what we're
to
seeing,
put the
sorry
Islam.
to interrupt you, but it seems that what we're seeing 42 years later, that obviously they haven't been successful. Thank you so
Very
much
true.
for being with us, Mr. Yahya Jahangiri.
My pleasure. Thank you.
International lecturer.